right, well, this is Lori Dixon. I'd like to welcome everybody. And just to be courteous, I want to start on time. If you are using your telephone or headphones, if you could please be sure to mute your phone, that would be great. I'd like to welcome all of you. And just a couple quick reminders. We'll talk for about an hour, but the presentation is going to move from a presentation of how to do the protocol testing, and then we'll have Q&A. On the phone here at Great Lakes Marketing is Deb Stout and Jan Hepler. Deb and Jan are the project managers here. Many of you have probably spoken to them over the last couple of years. Deb's been at Great Lakes for about 9 years, and Jan's been here for 13, and I dare say that I've been at Great Lakes for over 30 years. So it's a pleasure to chat with you all, and any new individuals on the phone, welcome. So thanks for joining, and our agenda is going to be to talk about the testing procedures, the packaging prep, and then some Q&A. I'd like to welcome John Boja, who is on the call from the CPSC. I figured you would want to hear from the expert. So near our Q&A presentation, and at any point that you have questions, I will probably defer to John or make a feeble attempt myself to answer. But that's the purpose of this call, is for you to get the information that you need. So this call is just about the protocol testing. We do the human factor testing and consumer research and label comprehension testing, but that's not going to be covered in this presentation today. So the purpose of the Poison Prevention Packaging Act is to protect children from serious personal injury or serious illness resulting from handling, using, or ingesting hazardous household substances. The key phrase here is that it is household substances. So if you feel that the substance that you are packaging is a regulated substance for household, but not for commercial use, it's not relevant. But if it's in the household distribution channel, then it is relevant. We're going to be talking about 16 CFR 1700, and just for clarification, you may see it written as 1700.15, and that's just referring to the standards, and .20 is the actual procedure for testing. So sometimes people have asked what those designations are, and that's just a way to refer to the proper section of the regulation. Specifically, the special packaging that's referred to. It's packaging that's designed or constructed to be significantly difficult for children under 5 years of age to open or obtain a toxic or harmful amount of substance contained therein within a reasonable amount of time and not difficult for normal adults. So if we take this piece by piece, typically a package that is constructed to be difficult will take two motions, a push and a turn, a squeeze and a turn, holding tabs while lifting up, something that requires two motions. It's unlikely that you will be successful in creating packaging that is just requiring strength, because obviously we need it to be senior friendly as well. So it's a design that's clever to outsmart the children. Under 5 years of age is very specifically defined as 3.5 to 4.25 years of age. A harmful or toxic amount is most relevant when you're dealing with a unit dose, and the regulation specifies how to determine a toxic dose. And a reasonable amount of time is been decided to be 10 minutes, and that's just a buffer for parents to get access to that ingredients before their children do, and just really to make sure that the children don't have time alone. So it's not that it keeps children out, it only keeps them out for a reasonable amount of time. And the other issue is that it cannot be difficult for normal adults to use, because the key issue is that packaging in the home has to be used correctly, meaning it has to be opened and closed. And if it's too hard to use, then the senior adults will not use the packaging correctly, and the value is significantly lost. On our website is the listing of the different regulations. So I will constantly be referring to 16 CFR. If you haven't gotten a copy, if you need any help finding it, you can go to our website and the regulations are there. Now we're only talking today about packages. The regulations are slightly different for lighters and gas cans, but those regulations are also on our website. There's also videos, so if it's hard for you to envision the kind of testing that I'm talking about, you can look on the website and you can find some videos to watch, and it might make some of this a little bit more clear. So what I want to do is take you through testing the packages, getting ready, and how all of that comes together. There's some decisions that need to be made when it's time to test your packages for child resistance. They have to be prepared so they replicate what will be on the marketplace. We recommend that you put placebo in them for a couple of different reasons. If it's a bottle, we like to have placebo in there because when we're testing the adults, we can say, please open and shake a few pieces of bean or whatever is your placebo, and please properly close. And we feel that by opening and separating the opening and closing process, that it makes the senior more aware of a proper closing. It also makes it easier for us to get an accurate timing on the opening and on the closing. The torque for any torque-dependent packages should replicate the torque that you believe is being used at the manufacturing level. So whatever your on torque is, we would use that torque and recommend you use that torque, and then they rest for 72 hours to take a set, and then we test them. With respect to the cycling of them, this refers to opening and closing the package a reasonable number of times before it's being given to the children. The purpose of this is that the child-resistant features have to last the life of the product. So it's based on the expected number of openings and closings for the size of the package or for the expected contents. And then the last issue is that the opening directions have to match what will be on the package in the marketplace. If you're still in the design and you don't have the directions formalized, you can put them on a separate piece of paper, but they absolutely have to be the same font size and the same words as what you'll be using in the marketplace. Timing-wise, it's important that you give yourself enough time to have the testing done correctly. It typically takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get the testing done, and the deliverables are a report that defines the methodology that was used, any unique sample preparations, all of the data collection forms that are signed by the senior adults, and the consent forms, if they're used, they're signed by the parents of the children. The key thing with the report is that we are often asked, I need to certify or I need a certificate. I'll talk about certificates a little bit later, but the company, the manufacturer or the distributor is the one that actually is responsible for the certificate. We provide all of the data that you need to put into that certificate. And the last point with the deliverables is be sure that you keep all of the original elements of the report that you have, because if you are going to share the information, you will need all of the pages of it. Again, oftentimes we're sent a couple of pages and it doesn't give enough details for us to understand how the testing was done. So we encourage there to be a systematic way to keep all of the reports within your company. So I want to talk first about the child testing. There's 2 tests that are required, the child testing and the adult testing. So we'll start with the child and we'll talk about the requirements and the protocol for a child panel. The first thing is that the children are 42 to 51 months of age. This is typically the 3.5 to 4.25-year-old. They're typically in preschools. So the issue for us is that we are testing these children in their normal preschool. which means that we're taking your package into preschools, which is why we demand that it be a placebo and not real, and why sometimes it's cumbersome over the Christmas holiday or Halloween or Valentine's Day, because we're actually in schools and we don't want to disrupt their parties, and they don't want us disrupting their parties. Half male, half female. The children are allowed to test only 2 packages in their 10-month testing lifetime. They're different ASTM types. For clarification, the ASTM is actually a classification of child-resistant packages. So sometimes I might ask you, if you're calling for to talk about testing, you might say that you have a bottle or a blister, but we often need to know if it's a push and turn or a squeeze and turn, or what kind of blister it is, because of this regulation here that children can only test 2 packages and test different ones. So we need to classify your package on our data collection forms and in your report. ASTM has them standardized, and you can get the regulation from the ASTM. You can buy it, or you can get us to give you the classification type. And then we have site and tester restrictions. And of course, that little kid is sitting there for a full 10 minutes, so we have to have a child who can go for 10 minutes without needing a potty break. The regulations here do sound a little overwhelming. However, the nice thing about having the panel so defined and the test method so defined is that it's reproducible. And that's the main thing, is that if we do 50 children and then we do another panel of 50 children, we find that repeatedly the results pretty much replicate themselves panel after panel. So the actual protocol, it's a very straightforward protocol and no room for interpretation. The children are seated. You say to them, please try and open this for me, and you give them the package. You don't say anything else, and you start your timer, and you give them 5 minutes to fold, spindle, mutilate, jump on, throw, do whatever they want with the package. After 5 minutes, our tester says to them to stop working on their package and to watch me open my package. And then the tester demonstrates how to open the package. There is no verbal used. It's strictly a demonstration on how to open it. If the package has opening directions that include a tool like scissors, then the tester would use scissors to open the package. However, scissors would not be given to the children. Then you say to them, you can try and open your package. You can use your teeth if you want to. I know some of you are cringing, but that is the regulation. So if one of the children at this point hasn't used their teeth, it's a requirement to suggest that they can use their teeth. Then they're given a second 5-minute period, which we refer to the first period and the second period, or before demonstration and after demonstration. And then we give them the grandma lecture. This is our chance to say, hey children, I know that we asked you to do this. I know that we asked you to use your teeth, but you may never do this at home, etc. So it's our chance to try and educate the children on how to be smart when they are in their own homes or left unattended. The actual criteria is a little bit cumbersome again, and we always get questions on how to interpret this. But if you look at it row by row, we test in bundles of 50 or in panel sizes of 50. So we typically will test 50 children, and we'll have a conversation with you, and we'll give you the results in the first 5 minutes, or what we call before demonstration, and the second 5 minutes of what would be considered after demonstration. So in the pass, continue, and fail range, we have the numbers to indicate whether or not it's doing well enough to pass and be done and only test 50 children, or if it's in that continue range in which if we test another 50 children and add them together, so they're sequential, so you're adding. So now we have a panel of 100, and you can see the criteria are a little bit more relaxed. So instead of having to pass at 97%, then you, or I'm sorry, 94%, then you can see that you have to pass at 90%. And you can see how the numbers play out, that it's 94% and 90 for a panel of 50. For all the way down to a panel of 200, you're only having to pass at 80%. Deb and Jan have made me promise that I will say this out loud. Over the years, and we've been doing this since the regulation was created, what we typically find is the pass-fail experience with a panel of 50 children is going to be pretty close with a panel of 100 children. So if you're doing very poorly and you're in that fail or the continue range near the fail range, we usually consult with you on why you're at that level and try and come up with some recommendations for package improvement. But if you're not passing at least 80%, the chances of you changing and all of a sudden children having different reactions to your package is pretty slim, because the trends don't really change over time. I can go through this pass-fail table in a little bit more detail, but I'd be more than happy to do that if anyone wants to call and discuss it. But it just takes a second to look at it, and then it does make sense that you're ultimately testing up to 200 children. But if you're doing well, you can just stop short of 200 children. This is my soapbox. I will repeat this every day for the rest of my life, that packages are child resistant. They are not child proof. It's so important that as people in this industry, as manufacturers or distributors or consultants in this industry, we have to remind the public that these packages are child resistant. The good packages keep a child out for 10 minutes. Some of the really good packages might keep them out longer, but that's not the goal. It's a buffer for the parent to get to the child. Remember that they don't even have to be 100% foolproof, because you can have some children will get into them and some children will access some of the pills. So they're not 100% safeguarded. So the key thing is to keep using the terms child resistant. Okay, I'm off my soapbox, and now we'll talk a little bit about the senior panel. The senior panel is also extremely regulated. The ages are 50 to 70, and you must do a certain percentage in each one of the age categories. We do 70% female and no more than a certain number at each site, and there are also tester requirements. And again, the seniors have regulations that they also cannot test two different or the same ASTM type at the same sitting. And again, the ASTM type is a classification of package. So potentially a senior might open a bottle and then a blister, but they cannot open the same types. So the same kind of information collected for the child panel is collected for the adult panel. The protocol is also very standardized. We ask help from normal adults. We ask them to read and sign a consent form. This is an important part of the process because it gets them to sit down, get their glasses on, relax, and get ready to take our process seriously. We say, I'm going to ask you to open and properly close these two identical packages according to the instructions found on, and then we indicate where the instructions are. Typically they are on the package, but if you're not that far along in the development, you can have them on a piece of paper that replicates the exact directions that would be on the package. If they stop, we may say, are you finished with that package or would you like to try again? But that's all of the prompting that they get, and they have 5 minutes to open that first package. This is in essence called the familiarization period. It was created because new packaging does take some time to get used to, and the thinking was that after 5 minutes, if somebody hasn't figured out how to open it, they're probably going to give up or get a hammer before they continue trying. So then we continue and we say, please empty the blank into the container. It's not mandatory that there be something in the package. We strongly encourage it because it does allow the senior to stop and think and empty and then concentrate on closing. And then we say, please close the package properly according to the instructions on wherever they happen to be. If they open and close the package, we take it from them, we hand them a new package, and we repeat. But now this time they only get 60 seconds. So the assumption is that they've had 5 minutes to familiarize themselves, and now they only have 60 seconds to open and close it for real. And then we rate the ease of the opening. Now, when I said normal adults, our test for if they're normal or not is that if they haven't opened the first package, then they're given 60 seconds to open and close regular packaging. And the assumption is that if they can use regular packaging, they should be able to use child-resistant packaging. So that's the criteria. And then calculating the failures is very straightforward. If they don't open the first package in 5 minutes, or they don't open and close the second package in a minute, then they would be considered failures. The calculation is pretty straightforward. If they open the second package in 60 seconds, it's a success, and we divide that over 100. The reclosable packages are a little bit more interesting to figure out. Reclosable, in this case, they have to open and close the second package in 60 seconds, and the children actually verify the closing. So this is when we kick ourselves into the resecuring test. And the resecuring test is a 90% requirement. So if you just think about it logically, the value of a child-resistant package is that not only can it be opened, but it can be closed. And when it's closed, kids still can't get into it. So that's the key thing. And we also have the assumption that there will be some children who are able to get into a very well-made, successfully closed package. So the 20% margin is based on the fact that the child protocol testing says it has to be 80% effective. So the same general rule is applying here, that there's an understanding that up to 20% of the kids might get into even a properly closed, very good package. So this is where we spend a little bit more time trying to educate our clients on understanding how we calculate the Senior Adult Use Effectiveness Score, or the SAUE. So the SAUE calculation, I'll give you a quick example, and I know nobody liked math class, and I could bore you because I'm a statistician, but I will not do that. So my goal is to give you a quick calculation, and then I'm going to send everybody this presentation, or everybody that wants it, and I can certainly answer questions later, but we'll go through a quick how to figure it out. So if 3 seniors don't open the second package, that means I only have 97 packages left to give to the children. So we give 97 of those packages that were closed by the adults to the children. Then 20% of those, we already said, was an acceptable amount for the children to be able to open. So we have a 20%, what I call buffer, or acceptable number of openings. In my scenario, I have 27 children who opened the package. So this is 7.6 more than what's acceptable if you subtract the 27 from, or you subtract 19.4 from the 27. So then to figure it out, you have the 7.6 child failures that are in excess of the appropriate level, plus the 3 seniors who failed it. So you have a total of 10.6 failures. This does not meet the requirement because you're passing only at 89.4, and you need to pass at 90%. So when we're looking at the numbers, when we give you updates, we tell you how many seniors failed, we tell you how many children were able to access the package, and then we try and tell you what we think is trending with respect to the calculation. The key thing that we find is if the children are opening the package within a few seconds, we know that it's because the senior didn't close it. If the children are opening it in the second 5-minute period, that means they've had it in their hand for 5 minutes, the senior probably closed it and closed it fairly well. And it might be that there's something else going on with that package. So typically we'll talk you through these results so we can understand if we should keep going forward or maybe if some additional changes to the package is needed. So if we look at it a different way one more time, the pass criteria on that same table we looked at before, you'll notice it's in rows of 50, 100, 150, and 200. So if we only have 93 packages to give to the children, then we really don't even have a row of data to look at. So what we try and do is look at the combination of the seniors and the children. And if the child panel is doing really well, it's quite possible that even with maybe 7 seniors failing, if then you only have 5 children who are able to open it, you could end up with an SAUE of about 93%. So that would work that you would not need to continue doing child testing. So in essence, you'd fall right in this category that there would be 12 failures, 5 children and 7 seniors, and you can see where that 12 is, that you would actually pass in the worst case scenario. So again, what we try and do is look at the numbers at the senior level and the child level to figure out if additional testing is needed. The ultimate goal with the testing is you have to prove that it is senior friendly and child resistant, and that may or may not take both tests. With respect to package preparation, this is always important to make sure that we document and understand the preparation. The shelf packaging is removed and all tamper-evident materials are removed. Typically what will happen is the senior is given the package, they remove all of the tamper-evident materials, and then the package is given to the children. We talked about the torque. It's very important that threaded caps are applied at the same on torque as what your packaging line, and they have to sit for 72 hours because it needs to take a set. And then we need to always discuss the need for cycling. If there's any belief that the child-resistant feature will degrade as it's opened and closed, it's absolutely necessary to cycle the package a reasonable number of times based on the expected use. With respect to the tools, if a tool is available with the package, then we give that tool to adults. So in some of the larger packages, paint cans, things like that, sometimes a tool would be affixed, and that tool would be given to the adults and to the children if it comes with a package at retail. However, if it doesn't, for example, a little scissor icon, then the tool can be pictured on the package, but it is not supplied to the children. You give it to the adults, but you do not give it to the children. Just to reiterate, the instructions available with the package are given to the respondents, even if they're on the outer box. But the prototypes and things of that nature, you can create different directions, but they always have to be the same color and font size. For the number of packages, it's important that we get a new package for each of the seniors for each of the rounds. So since each senior is given 2, we need 200 bottles, or if it's a unit dose, we need 200 for the seniors. But for the children, we have to give the children new packaging, and if it's unit dose and maybe each kid would get 2 cards to be toxic, then we have to have enough units to give all the children a unit that's a toxic level. So they might get 2 or 3 cards to open if that's how many it takes to be a toxic level. So that gets us to the point now where you know enough to be dangerous, and I wanted to introduce some different questions that we have been asked over time, and feel free if you want further clarification. But John, I think I'm going to put you on the spot because I think they'd rather hear your answers, if that's okay, if you want to address some of these issues. First one is bracketing. Everybody asks me about bracketing.
Well, bracketing basically is when a manufacturer has multiple sizes. And in the past, the CPSCs allowed manufacturers to assume, or I shouldn't say assume, but make a educated statement that a size that would be between two sizes that were tested would also pass. For example, if somebody made a 24 millimeter closure and a 28 millimeter and a 33 millimeter, and they only tested the 22 and the 33, they could make a fair guess that the 28 would pass as well, as long as all the conditions were the same. You know, we didn't change bottle types or we didn't change bottle materials. So that's what's known as bracketing. We generally recommend that you test the extremes, the biggest, the largest, and a few in the middle in order to do your bracketing.
Okay, and then John has told me that when we do our report, we are to reference the sizes that are included in the quote bracketing, and just reference the fact that the report was done on a particular size, but these other sizes are also being covered by the report. Okay, so if anyone wants to interrupt, that's cool, but I'm going to move on to the other questions that we've been asked. Do you have to retest if you change materials or if you change manufacturers?
Well, under our reasonable testing program definitions, which is what we expect you to do with packaging, they say anytime a material change is made, you should retest. If you change materials, that is a material change. You've gone from something that you tested before to something new. Previously, I've seen a test report where a closure was tested on a high-density polyethylene bottle, and the manufacturer then decided to use a low-density polyethylene bottle. And when I got a hold of the package, I had a hard time opening it myself. And at the time, I would not have been considered a senior adult. So I can't say that now, but at the time I wouldn't have been. I contacted the manufacturer. They went back and retested it, and indeed were startled to find that that package no longer passed the senior protocol. So they had to make some corrections and repackage their item. If you change manufacturers, well, you know, are they using the same resin as what you've been used to? Is there any other changes? A change in manufacturers may or may not necessitate retesting. It's, again, how comfortable do you feel that the package on the market is reflected by the package that was tested? And if there's any doubts, you might be best to retest.
When you say retest, would you ever consider it appropriate to do a partial, like just 50 children and maybe just 50 of the oldest category of adults, if it's just kind of a checkup to make sure that you're on the right track?
Well, if you've changed materials, you've gone from one type of bottling material to another, I really would retest it. I wouldn't, because you've made a material change. And under our testing and certification requirements, that really requires a new test. If you've changed manufacturers, maybe you might want to do a panel of, say, 20 or 30 children and a few adults to make sure that you're still within the parameters you wish to be.
Okay, perfect. Package preparation. Our main issue is to just keep reaffirming that the package preparation has to be documented. We have always said if you are going to induction seal it, we recommend that you induction seal it and that we test it with the induction seal, because we have found that sometimes the seal itself influences how the cap nests to the neck of the bottle, or how easy it is to remove the seal fully and close it correctly. We also believe that there should be some kind of fill in any type of placebo, even if it's a rigid card. I'm sorry, a fill in any kind of blister card, because the actual tablet itself can sometimes be used as a tool to help push through or for helping to bite in and around the cavity. So that's been our recommendation. John, any comment on that?
That's absolutely correct. The package that you test should be reflective of the package going to the marketplace. So anything that you plan on putting in the market is what you should be testing. You should use definitely in unit dose packaging some kind of placebo tablet that should mimic the hardness, the size, the shape, etc. Of what is going to be in the package, because as Lori mentioned, that pill can sometimes be used, or capsule can be used as a tool to gain access.
Okay. Another frequent question, can we stop the testing if it appears to be failing? From our standpoint, we encourage you to stop testing when it looks like it is not going to pass, because there's no reason to expose more children than necessary to the packaging. However, sometimes we continue testing at the request of clients because they're learning from the children and they're watching how they're able to open it, or they're watching how failures occur at the senior level. So from that extent, testing stops when it's no longer an appropriate protocol test, but there's often value in videotaping or watching the children or the seniors with your package. So testing does not have to officially be protocol testing. It can certainly be exploratory and has proven to be quite valuable. We also videotape the testing if you are unable to watch it and you want to learn firsthand what the seniors and children are doing with the packaging. Sequential panels, I've already touched on this, but for us it's very important that you help us understand your goals. Very rarely today do we ever see that a child panel is going up to 200 children. The quality of packaging available is such that it will typically pass within a panel of 100. You can certainly go up to 200, and that's the regulation, but we don't see that occurring. If you're in the failure range or you keep having to continue, today there might be an opportunity for you to find better packaging out there. John, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
No, I would agree that if you're testing close to 200 children, that's an expensive proposition.
Typically, it's not going to change. If you're squeaking
Really?
by that we have to keep going, it's a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we had a caller question. Okay, maybe not. Another question is, can the testing be done outside the U.S.? With so many international companies now, what is your position on that?
Well, unlike the lighter regulation, the Poison Prevention Packaging Act testing can be conducted as long as they follow the protocols of 16 CFR 1700.20. We do not accept the ISO test because the test is slightly different. So testing has to be done to our protocol, but it can be done outside the U.S. as long as our protocol is followed.
Okay. Let's see. Moving on, a couple other questions. Whether or not a resecuring and a child panel. We often have people ask us, why are you doing a resecuring and a child panel? What I tried to show before is that in some cases, the resecuring results are so positive that the numbers actually show that it is child resistant and that a properly closed package also meets the requirements for a child panel. Potentially, the resecuring results skim by, and yes, you do have a passing SAUE score, but the child panel alone does not meet the requirements. So that's why you would move on to a child panel. We are typically throughout the process discussing whether or not you're going to have to move on to a child panel, or if we can supplement the adult panel with properly closed packages. But it's not arbitrary. You either pass or don't pass. So that's why we always recommend originally budget for and plan for a 100 resecuring test plus at least a 50 child test.
Well, I would just add, Lori, that a resecuring test is done when it's not apparent that the package has been properly reclosed, such as you might see with a push and turn. There are certain package types that you'll hear an audible click when it's properly resecured. There's other ones where you can visually see if it's been properly closed. But when you can't visually or audibly determine if a package has been properly closed, that's when a resecuring test is generally done.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to mention that and I did not. So that's when you see a proposal from us, it will say if the package is visually closed, and if it's yes, that you can see that it's closed, then we have pricing for an adult test and a child panel. If it is not apparent just from visually looking at it or an audible sound, then you see the pricing for a resecure and a child panel if the child panel is needed.
I neglected to mention what a visual cue would be, but if you had a package where you would line up the arrows, say, you could look and see if the arrows are no longer lined up when they hand you the package back.
Okay. We often get questions on why are we testing seniors, because, again, it's just the act is to safeguard the children. But I think by now you've heard us talk about how important the closing of the package is. If the senior cannot use the package effectively, they won't use the packaging correctly in the household, and then in essence you've got substances in the household where they're not being used correctly with the child-resistant packaging. So that's just an important element of it, and it's not an independent issue. It's the seniors and the children interact with each other because of how the package is used by the seniors. International standards, John just said that the CPSC will not accept the international standards because they are slightly different. But moving in the other direction, we have changed the way we do some of 16 CFR, and we've added the 2 questions on the senior consent form so that we are not only meeting all of the 1600 regs, but we are also meeting the ISO regulations with the senior test. We also have record keeping that allows us to determine if the children have tested within a certain time frame, which is something unique to ISO that is not in 16 CFR 1700. So the CPSC will not accept it, but it does go the other direction because we've actually incorporated both, so we've met higher thresholds for both one of those regulations. I keep using the terms ASTM, but the main thing to remember with that is that the ASTM offers a classification system, and how the bottles are classified is very important. We have people saying, can you test to ASTM whatever? That's the testing protocol you should be focusing on is the 16 CFR 1700, but the ASTM is a classification. And I have the standard classifications in this presentation, so as something just as a tool you can have that. John, you want to talk about third-party testing, because we're always asked if third-party testing is necessary, and when we say no, they always question that.
No, anybody that follows the protocol can do testing, but you need to follow the protocol exactly. So you have to get the proper number of children, you have to have the consent forms and such, you need the proper number of adults, you have to follow all the testing restrictions as far as, you know, where the children come from, number of children each individual tester can test and all. So no, there is no requirement that this be done by a third party. It could be done by first party, but again, you have to follow all the protocols and document that everything's been done correctly.
And then we're also asked if testing labs are accredited or need to be. Great Lakes Marketing is accredited, but that is not a requirement, and the CPSC does not certify or accredit testing labs. There is a list of testing labs on their website, but those are just options, but they are not endorsements.
That's absolutely correct.
And the last point is, should I send the CPSC my report? We get that all the time. You know, now that you've given me this beautiful report, do I have to send it to the CPSC? Do you want them?
Sure. There's a request. Well, we have a request in the standard that sample packages be sent to CPSC. But if you're going to go ahead and send us a sample package, we'd like to see the test protocol as well. It saves us a little step if we get a customer's complaint, or if we get a consumer calling us up saying, you know, such and such package didn't work. You'll probably be getting a phone call from us anyway requesting data.
So if you have it already, it just keeps.
If we have it already, you may not get a call, or if you do get a call, it may move a lot faster.
Okay. And then this is a very busy screen, but I just wanted to share this. We, again, often get calls and our clients request a certificate. So there is a general certificate, and the general certificate of conformity is actually created by the manufacturer. And these are the 7 statements that need to be in that certificate. If you choose to use third-party testing, which is point 7, then we give you all of the information, which is really just our address, etc. We can also suggest to you how to correctly fill it out with respect to the standard that you are meeting, but the certificate is created and maintained and made public by the manufacturer. We, Great Lakes, will give you a certificate just for peace of mind for you, and most companies will use that for marketing purposes. It's a pretty certificate, it has a seal, and it helps you if one of your customers is saying, hey, did you pass the protocol test? You can show them that. But our certificate saying that testing was done is not the certificate of conformity. That's something different. And the address in the lower right-hand corner tells you where you can find more detail on how to create and how to publicize your own certificate. It's kind of a misnomer. It's not a certificate the way it looks. It's just more of a statement of the testing. So at this point, we have about 10 minutes, and John is willing to answer some questions for 10 minutes. So if anyone has any, you can unmute your phone and ask away.
I was going to say, Lori, you're absolutely correct that a GCC is different than the certificate they'll get from, say, you or a bottle manufacturer. In the eyes of the CPSC, a manufacturer is a person that puts a regulated substance or a substance that's required to be in special packaging by a rule in the bottle or package. So that is who the manufacturer is. And the product would be whatever it is. Yes?
A question that often comes up is people will say to me, I only make a bottle. I don't put any substance in it. So I technically don't even have to do the testing.
That's absolutely correct. We do not have any requirements for empty packages. But as you alluded to earlier, if somebody who needs to use special packaging has a choice, I have a feeling they'll probably go with something that's already been tested over something that hasn't been.
Hey, Lori?
Yes.
Just wondering, how can we get a copy of this presentation?
I will send it to everybody that RSVP'd. So there's about 39 different individuals who've RSVP'd, okay. And I'm going to send a hard copy of it to everybody.
Okay, great.
All right. Any questions? If not, I'm going to thank all of you for listening. John, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And the next slide is the contact information for the CPSC. So feel free to contact them if you've got questions, or if you have any additional questions, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email. Sometimes, John, I hate to say this, but companies don't want to talk to you because they're afraid that they might alert you to something. So they often ask me to send my question to you. So
that's fine. We're nice people. We don't do that. But if they're more comfortable, that's sending you the question. That's fine.
One way or another, I always ask for the correct answer before I open my mouth. So we'll get you the correct information. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are doing this presentation again. And when I send you this hard copy, I'll let you know that we're the time and the date, and send an invitation. So if there's anybody else in your company or any of your clients that need to get information, please feel free to join in. And the next one is on the 22nd. So have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Welcome. Good day.